Welcome back to this week's Parent Parsha series, Parshat Chukat. I wanted to share one very short idea with you that I've been thinking a lot about this week. I was listening to an interesting podcast earlier this week, and it was talking about the uniqueness of humanity, the ways in which we strive to connect with other people, and the ways in which we try to be, by and large, a kind society. We try to think about helping other people, and that oftentimes, if we're able to shift the way in which we take in information, it really has the ability to allow us to engage in the world in a much more compassionate, kind way. And I was thinking about this in terms of the ways in which we communicate with our children, and how oftentimes there's a lot of discussion today about the rates of depression and anxiety amongst children. And we know that depression and anxiety is very much connected to the ways in which we take in the world and the ways in which we think about these events. We're thinking about the ways in which I experience something. I cognitively think about that based on that cognitive thinking, and the way in which I took that information in. It impacts the way in which I behave, because which also impacts the way I feel about behaviors. It's this very cognitive behavioral therapeutic model. And I oftentimes think about the fact that one of the best interventions that we as parents can give to our children on a daily basis is actually helping them to think about the ways in which they're taking in situations, and how sometimes they're taking in situations in a way that's either overly personalized or that's automatically extraordinarily negative, and helping them to create an alternative scenario, not because it's fantastical, right? Not because it's not plausible, but because indeed it is plausible. The ways in which we can create situations and change the narrative in our head is extraordinarily powerful. And I think that it's a balancing act between that and also not validating parents' feelings. I think sometimes there are some parents who are so quick to be like, it's not so bad, you're taking it too personally, nobody meant it that way, and not actually acknowledging that whatever they were feeling was really hard. And so that feels very dismissive. So I think sometimes being able to join the two pieces together, sometimes we as parents are scared of our children's emotions. We're scared if they're sad. We're scared if they're angry. We're scared if they're anxious. And in fact, we want children to have a multi layered emotional experience to the world. We don't want them to just think that happiness is the key and sadness is bad, and they have to exist in a plane of happiness, and everything they see has to be taken in with a positive light and a silver lining. Sometimes it's critical, and I would argue extraordinarily important, to be able to recognize the hard moment before you find the silver lining. Because I think there's something about it that, first of all, the active process of being able to acknowledge, like, that felt hard. I was hurt. Okay. Should I be hurt? Is there another way of thinking about it? Maybe I really can be hurt, but what does that hurt do for me? What does that do to me? And when I typed in the word attitude, the thing that popped up at me was positive attitude, positive attitude, positive attitude. And I think that, like, while there's like a tremendous amount of importance in that notion of positive attitude, I didn't pick something that was a positive attitude. I picked something which was attitude is everything, the way in which we take something in, and sometimes not always feeling the need to immediately make it positive, to be able to acknowledge that something was hard, something was sad, something was disappointing, and then being able to say, okay, it was hard, it was sad, it was disappointing, but um, did I actually read the situation correctly? And so maybe I don't need to be feeling all those negative emotions to it. Or maybe I did read the situation accurately, and maybe there's another way to think about it. It's all perspective. If you change your view, it will change your life. But at the same time, we want to encourage our children to acknowledge a wide range of emotional experiences. When I was listening to this podcast, it gave such a great example. It said that there was there was a person who was really trying to work on the ways in which he experienced situations to like basically be dan l'chafschut, to like encourage people to judge other people favorably. So he said that when people would cut him off, so somebody was questioning him saying like, how is that possible? In every situation, you always judge people favorably. And he said, yes, so the guy said, well, how about when somebody just cuts you off while you're driving? And he's like, well, I really take a pause and think to myself, maybe that person was driving a woman who was in labor and she had to get to the hospital and she was about to give birth in the back of the car. And that's why he cut me off. And when I think about it that way, I'm like, oh my goodness, please go in front of me. I am helping bring forth life into this world. And it totally shifts and changes the person's narrative and perspective on that whole situation. And I'm not sure we're always going to be able to, in all of those moments, shift our narrative to think about it from a positive perspective in that way. But I think there's a moment where it's like, oh, it's not all negative. It's not all personal. Sometimes it's not always about me. And I think it's such an important lesson that we want to be thinking about. I think when this week's Parsha, Parshat Chukat, one of the things that comes up is this notion that like Bnei Yisrael is struggling. They're struggling with changes. They're struggling with the loss of Miriam. They're struggling with the loss of Aharon. Moshe is struggling with, I would hazard to say humbly that Moshe is struggling with the loss of Miriam and Aharon and feeling a little bit like unknown what to do. Like if we think about the fact that the act of Moshe hitting the rock, which had such far-reaching impact, and there's so much written about what happened here and what the connection with this incident with him not being able to go into Eretz Yisrael and what did it mean for him as a leader. And there's so much there, but I also think about the fact that like I'm sure there was a moment of transition for him that was so painful and so hard. He just lost his sister. He too might have been wondering how is he going to move forward, and then having Bnei Yisrael basically catastrophize the situation. I think about the fact that part of the refuah is them looking into the nachash hanachosha, looking into the eyes of a snake, right? And trying to look at a snake, which in all of our symbolism is something terrible and something evil. And here it's the thing that is supposed to stop the machala, right? It's supposed to stop them. And so from dying. And like this idea that like even something that we associate with something negative has the potential to be something positive. I think that it's really thinking about the fact that like our eyes are taking things in all the time and really asking ourselves and helping our children to think about the ways in which we take all those messages in, and like the fact that we have a choice to make when we take things in with our eyes about how that's going to impact us internally. Are we going to see the good? Are we going to see the bad? Are we going to see the pessimistic? Are we going to see the optimistic? Are we going to see the thing that like we're just like kind of roll our eyes at, or maybe take a step back and think about it from like, okay, I would have thought that maybe this person would have done X, but like I'm sure they had a good reason for doing Y, and trying to really put ourselves in someone else's shoes. I think attitude is everything is related to the notion of teaching our children empathy for themselves, empathy for the people around them, empathy for their community members. And in that way, they also can be more in touch with their own emotions and not be fearful of their emotions. And when they're not fearful of their emotions, then they can be engaged with them and then have the opportunity to change them. Let's not be scared of our children's emotions. And let's not, when they say something like, oh my God, I just had the worst day and I'm so sad, I'm so depressed and I have no friends. Let's try not to look at them and be like, what would you like for dinner? Let's try to be like, that sounds so hard. That sounds so sad. Kind of be with them in the moment and then help them. Do you think that that's true? Do you really think that you have no friends? I know it feels like you have no friends today. Are you ready to talk about this? Do you want to like maybe go do something to calm yourself down? And then let's come back and talk about this. Maybe we could think about it a little differently. In those moments, you're doing cognitive behavior therapy with your kids, and you have such a more powerful impact on them because you live with them on a day-to-day basis. Parsha treats. Okay, Parshat Chukat. So first of all, Para Aduma. So first of all, I need to do a major shout out to dear friend, mentor, something, Tina Samter, who's been doing this for many years. I didn't post what she shared but it was totally inspiring for me. She had cow cookies that she made. I do not have a cow cookie cutter, which was shocking to me, and now something that I feel like I need to invest in. But I do not have a cow cookie cutter. But she did she did sugar cookies and cut them out of the cow, and then did red sprinkles. I thought that was amazing. I'm thinking red velvet cake. That's basically where I'm up to at this moment. So anything red for the para aduma. Nachash hanachosha, you could do lots of cool things with. She had basically sticks, and she wrapped a snake around them. I saw and didn't post it where you could make a cupcake kind of tail that was a snake with the head. I think you could also do really cool stuff for Horahar. So you could do mountain cupcakes. I thought that was very clever. Different people had different images. Some people just stuck you could take any type of you could even break, these look like they're cones. You could even break the cone and just stick it right inside of a cupcake. I like the rock candy. I'm thinking rock. I'm thinking rock cake pops, or even just rock sticks to do for Moshe hitting the rock. I was coming up a little blank on Be'er Miriam. So I'm curious to see if anybody else has any other ideas that maybe they could think of. I guess that was maybe the stick if you wanted to do rods. So I did rock candies. You could do that. I think lots of things to purchase, lots of things not to make your life particularly hard, especially as we know that the school year is coming to a close and a lot of parents are just themselves going through a transition, maybe wondering what their kids are going to do, or getting them ready for camp. And so go easy, but just because we have a lot going on and we decide to go easy doesn't mean we have to abandon ship on things that are fun for the Parsha. So wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom, and hoping it's a meaningful Shabbat.